Welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast with Scott McKenzie. Scott is a passionate industry professional dedicated to transferring cutting-edge, industry-focused innovations and trends while highlighting the men and women who keep the world moving. So put on your hard hat, grab your work boots, and let's go.
All right, welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast. My name is Scott McKenzie, and you know that this platform is dedicated to you, the industrial professionals, the companies that get it done. We try to bring the best of the best, the people that are at the top of their game, and share that information with you so that you can take it and be a success in whatever you do. We've got a great interview with a gentleman by the name of Joel Philo. That's Philo. He's a principal behavioral scientist with the talent science team at Infor. How about that one? So what they focus in on? Human capital. We're going to be talking about human capital all throughout this interview. So let's get going. All right, before we get going, because I want to get going, I'm running a series out there of why you need to be podcasting, why you need a podcast. If you're a company, if you're an individual, you need a podcast. You need to bring that into your portfolio of solutions. Either you bring it in or you find somebody to do it. If you're a company, it's all out there. Go to industrialtalk.com/why you need to podcast. Or you just go to the homepage, click on the button, boom, you're right there, and that's everything that I know about podcasting. The good, the bad, the ugly, but more importantly, it'll improve sales, it'll improve your marketing, and definitely improve your brand. That's what that's all about. Okay, if you're at the Industrial Academy, which is out there too, I have sort of 5 legs that I really highlight. And one, of course, is leadership. The other one's operations. Finance, because you need money, technology and sales and marketing. Those are the legs of really any company and any success. But you know what they sit on? They definitely sit on human capital. And that's what this particular conversation is going to really address, is human capital. And Joel and his wonderful team at Infor definitely bring the street cred when it comes to human capital, doing what is right, developing those teams for optimal success. So you need to reach out. You go out to his stat card. Of course, it has LinkedIn, and it's Joel Philo. And if there's another Joel Philo, which I don't know if there is, but if there was, you just put in Infor and you'll find him with no problem. He's got a lot of information out there, and he's active out there. So let's get going with this particular interview with Joel Philo, and let's start talking a little bit about human capital. Enjoy. All right, you listeners out there, this is Joel Philo. As you can tell, he's got mad skills out there. Go out to his LinkedIn stat card, Philo. That's a Philo, first name Joel. He is a doctor, but we're not going to go down that road. It's too formal, apparently. Anyway, hey, Joel, how are you doing? And welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast.
I'm doing very well, thank you. This is my first podcast, and I'm excited to be here to talk about this topic.
Look, man, you're going to do great. I'm already excited. And we're going to be talking about human capital. But before we dive into that particular topic, for the listeners out there, give us a little background on where you come from and what you're all about. And,
Sure.
Let's lay that foundation.
Yeah, I have about 20 years of experience in industrial organizational psychology. I actually went to UT Dallas and Texas A&M, so I'm kind of split in my loyalties between the Longhorns and the Aggies.
Yeah, we talked about that. I'm allowing you to be on this because we are Tiger fans here.
I'm very inclusive, so I love Tigers too. But I started out after my psychology degree working for the U.S. Department of Labor and got frustrated with the federal government as I was an employee there, and decided to go back to school and get my PhD in this field that was emerging at the time. It's actually one of the fastest growing fields in the world.
The name of that field, is it human capital or what?
It's actually called industrial organizational psychology. In some ways, it's like the science of human resources.
Okay.
And getting the PhD in that field allowed me to really think about things differently and start experiencing work differently. So I was able to work at Home Depot for a while, worked for a consulting company in Minnesota for a while, helping to get some of the first assessment instruments online. There was a company called ePredicts that's gone through many buyouts since then. And then I came down to PepsiCo and worked for a while there, doing a wide variety of things with some great leaders. It's a powerful, well-run company. I was in the Frito-Lay division.
I was looking
And
at your stat card out there. I see it.
yep, and I learned a lot there. Moved over to JCPenney, where I really did the most growing, 6 years there, doing a wide variety of things, and saw some significant cultural transformations while I was there that we could talk for hours about, and it taught me a lot, and ended up at a small startup that got bought up by Infor.
I'm telling you, man, that is another conversation to have, and JCPenney, maybe we can get you back on and talk a little bit about that, because that's from my perspective, an interesting case study on
Yep.
what not to do sometimes. Anyway, to sort of lay that all out. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about human capital. We got your the background into that. Lay out. One of the questions I have is where we're going, of course. Where do you see the future? Sort of define the past. Then let's talk about the problem, and then let's talk about where we're going. But in the past, how did we approach this particular subject matter?
Yeah, so the idea of an HR department, well, it wasn't the first idea when businesses started becoming the norm. And eventually, as organizations grew, you had your finance department that was obviously needed, marketing started to be obviously needed, and then eventually you started realizing you need an HR department. Businesses have always been populated by people. I'm not aware of any business that doesn't have any people in it, except maybe a shell company, which nobody really cares about running that. So people have always mattered, but the recognition of how much people matter tends to lag behind the reality. And the early HR departments tended to be more about managing cost, about record keeping, and it moved into centers of excellence, and eventually it started to get a seat at the table where people were part of the board meetings. And really, if you look at The Rise of HR, an ebook by Dave Ulrich, which I highly recommend, he brings together a lot of thought leadership, and one of the things he points out is we're moving into a new age where HR needs to get beyond the boardroom and bring new ideas in. Our organizations are porous. Things are changing fast. HR can't just have a seat at the table, it has to get up from the table and bring some ideas to the table and help to be more of a leader.
You listeners out there, you know that I'm a big tech fan, and I know that a lot of people are talking about how can I deploy technology and to try to avoid maybe that human component, but you're never going to get away from that. That's for sure. So I think the conversation that is real relevant is how do we address that? Give us a problem statement of what's the issue? What are we talking about today, right?
Yeah.
Joel, what is that?
Well, the pace of change is never going to be as slow as it is now. And we're seeing change continuing to accelerate. However, the change in technology, the change in society, the change in how businesses become successful is really outpacing our way we manage people, or even our people. People aren't changing as fast as technology is. So how can leaders within a company help to ensure that their people are keeping up with the technological changes, that they're taking people into mind as they make changes?
That's a big deal. I mean, when we start talking about the technology, the speed of technology, and our human capacity to be able to evaluate that technology and deploy it properly, blah, 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 you can keep on going. How do you address the human component to that? Because you're always going to have those individuals in there. There's always going to be a lag. What do companies need to do to sort of begin to look at that? Because you're not going to be successful if you don't have the right people in place and delivering the services and solutions that you want them to.
Yeah, well, data is king. We can't deny that. But how well do we really know our people? What kind of data do we have on our people? So I think it helps to get some more thoughtfulness around how data is collected and stored. I mean, I've worked on a number of projects where the data cleaning just to analyze a basic HR problem is monstrous. Everybody's entering in data in different fashions, different job codes.
That's a whole nother issue, man. Data integrity, data cleanliness, whole nother subject matter, but
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. A lot of pencil whipping out there with data.
Yeah, and it's worse for people data than it often is for maybe your data around your business processes or your equipment. There's a lot of things that we pay closer attention to, our capital, et cetera. To what extent do we pay attention to data hygiene of our people?
how do you avoid the possibility of becoming this, I don't know, this organization that's very stringent? I'm focusing on data. I'm collecting this information. How do you balance the necessity to be nimble and the necessity to, get the information that you need, and without being so rigid? Because, well, systems can make you rigid, but how do you manage that?
Yeah, I think it takes some creativity. So for one thing, instead of maybe designing what is exactly needed for a job and recording that in a static spot, maybe try to better understand what kind of people you have and create processes for assembling those data pieces into what's needed for a project. So, for instance, a lot of tests out there might have been designed for a specific job as opposed to the measurement of your people on things that are maybe more static. How ambitious are they? How extroverted are they? To what extent do they, like to work in teams? If you can find maybe more static measurements, then you can start applying that to different projects. Oh, for this project, we need team-oriented people, et cetera.
See, that's a big elephant. I mean, meaning it's like you can go to the nth degree on collecting this information and finding the team member, but not every incident, one size does not fit all.
Yep.
And so you're talking about massive change within an organization that is typically approaching HR a certain way. Like, okay, we're going to hire you, fill out this paperwork. You're in there. You go over here, have a good time. That's your boss. Ta-da! And then we're going to do quarterly evaluations. Done. And then how do you customize that? How do you bring in that unique quality that is necessary?
For one thing, it's helpful to try to, I don't want to get too wonky sounding here, but measure stable constructs. So a construct.
yeah. Because I'm sitting there going, it can't be too wonky. Yeah, you did it, man. You nailed it. You wonked it.
So there's some things that you can't see very easily, but they matter. So it's kind of like the idea of the drunk who's looking under the lamp pole for his keys, but he also actually lost them, over in the dark parking lot. We'll tend to measure what's easy to see, and we need to measure things that really matter. And there are ways to do that, but it takes a little bit of thoughtfulness. So, understanding how motivated your workforce is, or understanding what needs they have, or, what their preferences are. All those things can be codified. They can be measured if done carefully, and stored, and then used for a variety of purposes. If you know how ambitious someone is coming in the door through the recruiting process, why not translate that data into their onboarding process and into what types of jobs get offered up to them, et cetera?
Man, that's a one bite at a time to eat that elephant. and I would imagine, Joel, that let's say here's the organization, right? It's at the top. And then in that organization are individuals. And those individuals have unique qualities and skills and abilities and passions, whatever it might be. You can define it at an organizational level, but then you're going to have to dig deep into those individuals. And are there any confidentiality stuff that you've got to really wrestle with?
Well, there's an elephant right there. So, yeah, I mean, that's part of the challenge with people. And that's one of the reasons that there's actually a great paper out there from Princeton about the snake oil of artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence is important. There's a lot more automation happening, and there's great promise in it. Don't get me wrong. It works better in some areas than others. It works very well for things like perception, facial recognition, et cetera. But when you get to complex social phenomenon, it doesn't work as well. We're really in the infancy. And so to your point, part of the problem with HR data, not only is it messy, but it also has privacy concerns, ethical concerns, and there are also impacts of observing. So if you're tracking a refrigerator through a supply chain, it doesn't mind it's being tracked. It's not going to necessarily behave differently because it's being tracked. If you start tracking your employees throughout their day, they might start acting differently because now they're being tracked. And if they don't know they're being tracked, they'll be even more mad.
What's the condition called? The Westinghouse, whatever.
Hawthorne effect.
There you go. The Hawthorne. There it is, man. You're absolutely right. I'm going to do a better job because somebody's watching me.
Exactly.
If I was not being watched. And then of course that's a whole, big challenge there. So I'm a company. I put my company hat on. And I mean, how do I know I need this?
Well, if you're a company and you have people, then you need this. Because the reality is that,
But me being boss guy,
Yep.
I'm going to have some sort of the something inside my head that says, I'm not doing this right, or I'm struggling here. I'm not getting the best out or performance out of my team, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
I need to bring somebody in to help me.
Yeah. Yeah. Every HR organization has problems. Part of the challenge is surfacing them in a way that we can actually solve them. So it takes some dialogue, and there's really kind of two extremes that we're dealing with. I have a number of clients, and I help in sales process. I mean, I get involved with a lot of different people, and you have the people that are just jumping into technology and they don't know what they're getting into. They're not defining their problem well, and they're putting themselves at risk. Like Amazon got in trouble with scraping LinkedIn resumes to create algorithms for hiring, and not necessarily realizing that they were giving people lower scores if there were gaps in their employment history. That seems to make sense until you realize that women are more likely to have gaps in their employment history than men, and all of a sudden you have a selection tool that's biased against women. So there's sort of the automation gone awry. You have all the laws emerging around AI and hiring, whether it's the Illinois Artificial Intelligence Act or whether it's EMEA now with all their
hold on. My ears are bleeding right now. I'm telling you, that's why somebody's out there going, not going down that road. I want technology to solve all my problems, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, the other extreme, if you're not doing all the technology, if you're not doing what Amazon's doing, is you're not Amazon and you're losing to them. So
you're not Amazon. Trust me. You can take it, put it on a bumper stick. You're not Amazon. Trust me. So I go down this road. I recognize it. How do you take an organization that's probably entrenched in their culture, right?
Yeah.
Where do you start?
Well, first of all, I start with their culture. Being entrenched in your culture is a good thing. We recently got fully acquired by Coke Industries, and
that's not Coca-Cola. That's
KOCH, and I've gotten to know them better through this process. And their powerful culture is one of the reasons they're the largest privately held company in the world. They have a powerful culture that is important for their success. So the technology should not disrupt that culture. Rather, it should just enable that culture. It should help you better measure.
What if that culture needs some improvement?
That could be the case. In fact, it often is the case, and technology is not necessarily going to lead the solution to the problem.
So do you think that the first, you're just going to have to evaluate that organization, the culture, what's going on, and get a sort of an as-is evaluation of that particular organization before you even begin going down the road of technology?
Well, and you're always going to be trying to repair the engine on a moving car. Every organization's going down the road of technology. It's just a matter of where, how much, to what extent, and you do need to take culture into account as you implement technologies.
So we go down there, and you're saying, okay, now the culture sort of, I understand the organization. What's next?
So one of the real challenges
in
is
general, not, I mean, I don't want to go into the real,
Yeah.
What's next?
So it's like with any project, you have to understand scope. You got to understand where you can bring some value. Where are the positions that you can really, leverage, getting the most success out of fixing those positions. But honestly, the biggest challenge after understanding the company is getting their attention, getting the attention of the right leadership. The scarcest resource as we move into the future is attention. In fact, The Inevitable by Kevin Kelly is a great book about where we're going as an organization, as a society. And as everything becomes commoditized, cheaper, online, copied, what you're really left with is just scrambling for eyeballs and ears. People just are pulled so many different directions. So as I work with organizations, HR seems to be the last priority.
It's always the case. It is. How do you, let's say you go down, you invest, me, business owner, I invest all that time, energy, and effort, recognizing that there is a need to do this human capital, whatever we want to call it.
Yep.
How do you sustain?
Yeah, it's partnership. I mean, we're moving to software as a service, and an important part of that is service. It's not software with a small service. It's software and service hand in hand. Our own organization's going through that transformation, trying to get it right. And every company that's working with these vendors has to try to make that transition from a vendor to a partner. We're working together to try to help you get your cloud solutions or whatever technology solutions you're using to be aligned with your organizational mission, with your culture, with the future that you're moving towards. So it really requires a lot of communication and partnership, some trust.
See, what I see the value and of a technology that helps facilitate what you're doing within your organization
Yeah.
is people come and go. There is
Yeah.
a churn that just is natural with business. But if you have a technology that is in place, it's sort of that ability to sort of keep that moving forward, no matter what happens from a churn perspective.
I would argue something different. I would say technology comes and goes and the culture
Ah,
remains.
wow. Now, but see, this is where it's sort of interesting. I've been in so many organizations who invest a lot of time, energy, and effort into the culture and trying to create whatever culture they're trying to create. And then that individual who was sort of that, tip of the sword type person leaves because again, bigger, better things to do. And then that culture then begins to sort of fragment.
Yeah.
But so you really got to work on that culture. You just do.
And it takes time to change it. You
It's
can
time.
change
You can't.
technology faster than you can change a culture.
That's true. That's true. Then why would I want to be? I mean, me personally, I would want to really sort of invest time, a lot of effort into that culture and creating the right culture, because I would imagine that culture is also important for me to recruit,
Yeah.
retain.
Yeah.
To get and that's huge because as a former business owner, that whole, swinging door that oh God.
Yeah.
You don't want people to leave.
No, and it's easy to get enamored with FANG, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google have this great innovative technology, but think about their culture. I mean, they have unique cultures as well. Apple as well in that mix. I mean, their culture is an important part of their success beyond their technology. And then think of Uber. They had some great technology and innovation. Their culture might have been a challenge for them that they're looking to fix now. So culture has a big impact.
I don't care. I got an app. A driver comes on by, picks me up. I'm good to go.
Yeah.
I don't go beyond that. It's like, yeah, whatever. Which is really an interesting disruption of that old business model. We were told as kids never get in a car with a stranger.
Yeah.
And there we are. We got an app, and we're getting in cars with strangers all the time now.
Yeah, it's totally flipped on its head. And it's actually also this idea of culture is one of the reasons that the small players can increasingly have a disruptive impact because they can adopt the technologies and shift more quickly because their founders still there. They also kind of talk to each other. They share a culture. As you get big and acquire a lot of companies, you start losing a shared culture, a shared vision. You start having people checked out, and it can become a drag.
That's a good point. But then again, that's why you get paid the big bucks because you see that. And what I sense from the conversion, it never ends.
No, I mean, I have no fear of unemployment.
It's crazy because it always, like the future. Well, I don't even know what it's going to be like in the future, but it's constantly changing. And if you want to be relevant as a business, if you want to be successful, it gets down to that human capital.
Oh, definitely. And it's so hard to keep up. I have 4 teenage boys, and most of them are going to end up in jobs that don't exist today. The variety of future jobs that are coming are not even jobs that are around today. And so how do I prepare them for the future? I'm just trying to prepare them to ask the right questions and solve problems because answers are easy nowadays. Good questions and putting attention on the right things, that's hard.
Where do you see it going? I mean, because I've interviewed a lot of people with technology and pushing the envelope, whatever it might be. Where do you see it going? Some trends that are taking place within.
Well, Bain talks about some trends like in the next 10 years, 70% of service jobs will be automated. Look at Amazon has their cashierless checkouts. 7-Eleven's doing it as well, where you can go in and leave without anybody ever being there.
I don't want to talk to anybody, so I'm going over there.
Exactly. And that's one way to solve your culture problem. Just get rid of people.
It's so true.
Yeah. So, but that's a change in our economy. If we really move towards the automation of autonomous vehicles, the trucking industry is one of the largest industries out there, especially for blue collar workers that can make a living wage, 70 to 100 grand a year.
Yeah.
When those jobs disappear, I don't know what kind of social unrest that's going to create, but there's a lot of change happening, and HR needs to be aware of the societal change and the trends and help the organizations prepare for it.
Do you find HR organizations really trying to keep current, or are they lagging behind all of the stuff that's taking place?
I think there's a wide variety, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Things are changing so fast. So, I like my field. Society of Industrial Organizational Psychology is having their conference in April, and we're kind of a small group that thinks different, if you will. And I think HR's coming along, but it's hard to be a thought leader when you have so much going on. And one of the nice things as we automate for human resources, that gives them some time to do the thought leadership that they need to do. Because many of my clients are swamped. They're busy. They're too busy to really think about all this.
That is always the case. And I deal with it all the time. Hey, let's do this. Let's get back. But once you get off of this, Joel, yep. I guarantee it, once you get off of this podcast, you're going to go back to what you're doing. It's crazy, focus, and that's what everybody is. And it's hard to, in that workload, focus in. You're unique because you get to focus in on it, but majority of people, I'm focused in on my job.
Yeah.
Whatever fight I'm going through at this particular
it's overwhelming. It's someone else's problem. It's sort of the tragedy of the commons, almost.
And it's true. And I know I've got a problem here with this guy. Go to HR. I'm not dealing with you. There it is. I've dealt with it. That type of thing. By the way, on a side note, you talk about autonomous vehicles. I had some conversation with some people who are within the security space specific to these autonomous vehicles. One of the biggest challenge is how do you insure and wrap that vehicle in insurance?
Oh yeah.
I don't have an answer.
The humanity is what throws it off. Technologically, we can solve it, but once humans get involved, it gets complicated.
That's it. All right, we're going to have to wrap this up. How do people get a hold of you?
So I'm on LinkedIn, Joel.Philo at Infor.com. You can reach me as well. And nowadays, it's not hard to reach
You're
people.
pretty active out on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I'm pretty active out there. I'm on Twitter a little bit as well. I'll be at the Society of IO Psychologists conference in April in Austin, which is a great conference for anybody really wanting to see the future of where human resources is going. HR Tech's great as well. But yeah, just reach out if you have questions, thoughts. Like this.
You listeners out there, I'm going to have all this contact information on his specific landing page for this podcast, as well as that conference. When's the conference?
It's in April.
Okay, you got time.
Third week, yeah.
All right. We're going to have that link too. Can you give him a discount?
I wish. I'm on the visibility committee, not the pricing committee. So.
All right. He's got passions about some books out there too as well. It's all going to be out there. You know that, listeners. Joel, what a pleasant conversation. Thank you very much for joining the Industrial Talk Podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on. I'm on.
All right. You listeners, stay tight. I'll wrap it up on the other side. So thank you very much for joining the Industrial Talk Podcast. We will be right back.
You're listening to the Industrial Talk Podcast Network.
All right, you Industrial Talk listeners out there, thank you very much for joining the podcast. Now, remember, that is Joel Philo. That's Philo. Go to his LinkedIn stat card out there. Reach out to him. He is active, and he knows what he's talking about. He's passionate about your success and creating those teams and finding the right individuals to make you a success in the future. That is Joel Philo with Infor, which is a great company, too, by the way. So we'll find out more about Infor as well. All right. Once again, I'm going to reiterate this. IndustrialTalk.com. Find the button that says why you need a podcast, and you need a podcast. Click on that. You get everything that I know. No strings attached. Just listen to them, because you need to either bring it in-house and figure out how to do it and bring it into your marketing mix, or find somebody to do it for you. Either or, you need to bring it in there because it will increase sales. It will just improve your marketing, and you get that content. It's a content-generating machine. Doggone it. All right. Once again, everything's built on people. That's what Joel's all about. Leadership, operations, finance, technologies, and sales, everything that's associated with that. all about people. Find out the right people that you need to make your team a rousing success. So thank you very much. Be bold, be brave. Dare greatly. Thank you very much for joining the Industrial Talk podcast. We will be back with another great interview. So be safe. Take care. Talk to you later.